Hey, I'm Jerry Smith, and I'm here today with Brett Whiteside, and we're going to share with you some thoughts about revenue sharing and where we've been and where we're going. And I've known Brett for a while, and I'll let Brett sort of introduce himself, and then I've got some questions I want to ask Brett and get Brett's response on those questions. So, Brett, thank you for being here.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks for having me. So I'm Brett Whiteside, Senior Associate AD for Player Management at Auburn University. Really got to know you in my previous role at On the Victory. That was Auburn's NIL collective. I served as the executive director from 22 to 25, and we worked with the J.F. Smith Group, raised a large amount of money in the NIL business back before the rules changed, and that's all thanks to our Auburn donors and our Auburn supporters. Obviously could not have done that without them, but the infrastructure that you put together with the J.F. Smith Group and all of your staff, and the way in which we were able to professionalize what we were doing and to create a campaign, it was very impactful for Auburn student athletes. And so I'm happy to be here today to kind of talk through that and where we're at in the new set of rules with revenue sharing with the institution paying directly now.
So, Brett, I think we raised about $36 million.
We exceeded our goal. We certainly did.
We did. It was a great experience, and you played a major role in that too.
Well, it was great to work with your staff and to learn this business and to have an opportunity to go out and see great Auburn supporters and to put together a first class campaign.
Right. So, okay, I'm going to ask some questions, and my first question is: can you explain how the new revenue sharing model differs fundamentally from the NIL landscape?
Yeah, absolutely. So following the House settlement, starting effective July 1 of 2025, institutions can now directly compensate student athletes using university funds or foundation funds. Those revenues can come from a lot of different places. But bottom line is institutions can now directly compensate student athletes. So that's what is known as revenue sharing, right? So there is a limit. It's $20.5 million, which includes new scholarships. For your student athletes. You can allocate it any way you want to. Additionally, there are third-party NIL opportunities, so a student athlete can work with other brands to provide them with additional opportunities above and beyond what the institution can provide. So that's kind of the clear distinction between this is what the university can do, and then there is no limit upon which a student athlete could earn from other businesses.
Right. What about donors? That's how we raised the money with NIL. We had private support, was not deductible.
Right.
So now, how does that relate to?
Yeah. So right now across the country, right, this is not uncommon. We're all facing the similar challenges. But if a university, is going to fully fund this, then you're looking at a minimum in the Power Four of $20.5 million, but you can certainly provide additional scholarship opportunities. One of the big changes in the rules is an institution can now provide full scholarships to all the student athletes on rosters. This is a fundamental change, a huge increase. And so there are certainly new opportunities that donors can get involved in. Just at Auburn alone, we have an additional annual expense of over $7.5 million for new scholarship opportunities to our student athletes, which that has been one of the greatest outcomes of this, is when you think about student athletes who have been paying to go to school, they've been getting loans to go to school, they've been on partial scholarships, to now have opportunities to provide closer to full scholarships or full scholarships, what a positive impact that can make. And so, funding scholarships is a fundamental goal of a lot of foundations. There's certainly new opportunities there.
But that's got to be a real challenge for athletic departments today to fund that additional $7 million.
Yeah, this is essentially an unfunded mandate in that this is a new budget line item that you're not receiving additional dollars from the NCAA or from the conference or for the CSC. This is a challenge for our athletic administrators across the country to figure out how they're going to fund it. Right. So you can use all of your different revenue streams, but I do know that a lot of institutions are looking to their foundations to help them with this.
Right. Okay, are payouts based on sport, performance metrics, playing time, or a combination of factors?
That's a great question. So, number one, there is no uniformity of how this is being done across the country. So, every institution is able to determine how they're going to allocate their revenue share disbursements. And then within every team gets to decide how they're going to allocate their disbursements. One team may say every player on the team will get, X dollars, or, there could be a variety of different ways that it can be done. But everything that you mentioned, absolutely. I mean, there's certainly ways in which you can allocate funds to players who are on the field more, and to allocate players that are in key positions. So it can be done a lot of different ways. We're certainly moving towards a more way in which you allocate funds to more closely resemble maybe how the NFL or the MLB or NBA might say that the quarterback is more at this level, and an offensive lineman is at this level. There's different ways that you can do it, but fundamentally across the country it is being done. There's 140 schools. It's probably being done 140 different ways.
So you're signing all the athletes to a contract?
Doesn't have to be all the athletes.
Or to the athletes that receive money?
That's right.
It's a uniformity in those contracts?
Zero uniformity. So as I communicate with agents and attorneys for all of our student athletes, that's the one piece that I constantly hear. It certainly would be nice to have a uniform agreement.
Right.
Because again, if they represent 100 clients and those 100 clients go to 100 different schools, they're looking at 100 different agreements. It would certainly be nice to get closer to an agreement that we all use, and that there's limited variability within those agreements.
So without getting into a lot of detail, could you sort of give us an overview of what those contracts look like?
Yeah, I mean, we have an agreement that's very thorough in that it kind of lays out these are the services that a student athlete would provide for their name, image, and likeness. These are the various provisions related to what we expect of our student athletes to preserve their name, image, and likeness, and that of the institution, the way in which they can work with our corporate partners. And then obviously when it comes down to the compensation, how that's broken out, that can be done a lot of different ways. You could pay every student athlete weekly or monthly or bi-weekly. I mean, you can do it a lot of different ways. And so that's kind of the last part of the agreement that we actually lay out exactly what that payment installment schedule looks like.
Do you monitor those services, the student athlete perform?
We do, for sure, yeah, and we schedule it around their class time and their team activities. But yes, we play a key role in ensuring that our student athletes are performing the services for the institution and for our corporate partners in ways that's mutually beneficial.
Right. So, Brett, how do you explain to athletes the difference between revenue share payments and NIL opportunities?
Yeah, so the first lens in which I want our student athletes to see it is all of this is NIL services, right? You're being compensated for your name, image, and likeness. And so the institution is going to require you to perform services just like outside companies. But what the institution is going to provide you is going to be in one agreement. And if you do NIL deals with 10 other companies, you're going to have 10 other contracts, 10 other NIL deals. And the biggest difference is what the institution provides is not subject to any type of range of compensation requirement or any type of valuation requirement. Now, when it comes to a third-party company, a private outside company, private or public outside company, it is subject to ensuring that what the student athlete is doing for the compensation they're receiving, that it falls within an appropriate range of compensation. And they use an outside firm, Deloitte, that helps them establish what a market range of compensation would be. That's the biggest difference between the two, is that if you're doing things for an outside company, it's got to be reasonable compensation for the actual services that they're providing.
Is this in addition to the revenue sharing that they're
Absolutely can be. So, in the news lately, you've read about institutions that are requiring their student athletes to sign exclusive NIL rights agreements. So, meaning that for the compensation that the institution's providing them, that institution owns their rights exclusively. They don't have an opportunity to earn outside of that agreement. So, that is one way that it could be done. Our student athletes, they have the ability to go out and earn as much as they would like to outside of what we're providing them. That's the biggest difference between maybe one institution that requires the student athlete to grant them exclusivity, meaning they can't go earn anything else, versus an institution that allows them to go out and earn as much as they'd like to above and beyond.
So is a student athlete going out trying to find his own?
Yeah, or they can hire an agent or agents. So with all of these rule changes, what has also been introduced is the concept of a marketing agent that can go out and secure these third-party NIL deals for their clients. So they're representing them for their NIL, not for professional contracts. So that rule is still in place.
Right.
But yeah, they can go out and they can find them as many NIL deals as they would like.
And what are the agents? What are the percentages do they take from that?
Yeah, it obviously varies. I mean, there are certainly agents out there that are taking very low percentages and things that might be more in line with what you see in the professional ranks. But there are certainly agents that are reaching higher
Right.
double-digit percentages, 15, 20%,
Right.
has been communicated. But at the end of the day, I think it's the student athletes entering into an agreement with an agent or an agency, and they understand that this is what their fees are going to be. That's an agreement between them.
Right. I think you sort of answered this maybe, but can an athlete receive both revenue share payments and NIL deals simultaneously, and how do you manage that?
Yeah, so yes, they can if the institution allows for it. Some institutions don't. They don't want their student athletes to be able to earn above and beyond what the institution's providing. So in that instance, I suppose they monitor and ensure that their student athletes are not going to receive an additional compensation. We are not an agent for our players to go out and find them additional deals, but we can certainly connect them with corporate partners. I think the rule verbiage is facilitate. We can help facilitate that. As an institutional staff member, I cannot guarantee, neither verbally nor in writing, third-party NIL opportunities, but we can help facilitate those, and we can connect them with our partners.
Does that mean you introduce them to John Smith and his company, or whomever that
Could be done that way? Yeah, I think most schools are probably using their corporate partner, their multimedia rights partner, like a Playfly or a Learfield, to help connect them with corporate partners that are already participating with the school. That's the more likely companies that want to get involved in this, but it could be any private company.
So then the agent or the athlete negotiate that deal.
They can, yes, correct. The institution would not be involved in that.
Right. Okay. All right. What challenges have you faced in communicating payout structures to athletes and their families?
That's a good question. I think every student athlete handles it differently. Right, so once you become 18, you can enter into a legally binding agreement. So it can simply just be a conversation between us and the student athlete. If they bring in representatives that they would like for us to visit with, obviously happy to do that. Sometimes that is parents, sometimes that's other family members, sometimes it's an agent or an attorney or an accountant even. So we're happy to visit with any type of representative that our student athlete feels like they need to help them in making a decision. These student athletes are independent contractors. They're going to receive a 1099, and they should seek outside counsel to help them navigate not only the tax implications, but also to help them understand the contractual terms of the agreement. Most of the agreements that are being provided by institutions, they're very thorough, and they cover a lot of areas. And so I think our student athletes should seek counsel. If they don't understand what the provisions of the agreement are, they should have someone help explain that to them. And so we deal with a lot of different people that are helping our student athletes navigate these decisions.
What's typically the length of a contract?
The term, you mean? How long do they go? Mm-hmm. I think it varies by sport, but typically it's a 12-month agreement. The sport of football runs on a more calendar year, so you're talking about January to December, or maybe into the following January after a bowl game. And then for most of your other sports, they do run on a more typical academic year. So those contracts, they may run July to June. But it can vary. It could be a 1 month contract. It could be a 2 or 3 or 4 year contract.
So it can go for any length.
It could. It could. Now the thing about that, and I won't get into too many of the details, but we're required to stay within our cap allocation for every year, and it runs on a July to June year. And so if you had multiple years in a contract, that all immediately counts into the cap system. And so that can somewhat hurt you if you do have agreements that are running for multiple years, because it counts in your cap immediately. But every school does it a little differently.
Without sharing dollar amounts, what's been your experience not only at Auburn but other institutions? Percentage of the money, where it goes. Where does the revenue sharing? I would assume most of the percentage would go to football.
Yeah, I think most of the schools in the Power Four are likely allocating it in a way that represents the revenue that's being received from those sports. Right, most schools are going to have one, maybe two net revenue sports. Everyone else is not going to generate net revenue. That's certainly a way that you could allocate it. Every school is doing it a little bit differently.
Right. What about D3 schools, or schools that are not the Division One? Where is that going?
You know, that's a good question. I don't know a lot about how a Division III or even a Division II school, how they allocate revenue sharing, or if they're even participating in revenue sharing. D3 doesn't have scholarships, so I don't even know that they would participate in revenue sharing. Right. I know that there were previously Division III schools who were providing student athletes with NIL to help them with some scholarship costs, but how they're navigating post July 1, I'm unsure.
Right. How sustainability is your revenue sharing model long term, and what happens if athletic revenues decline?
That's a great question. I mean, I think, is this a sustainable model is a question that gets asked a lot. I think that the way that it was established from the settlement is that it's $20.5 million with a small percentage escalator for the next 3 years. And then there's a look in after the 3 years to determine if we're still allocating an appropriate percentage of revenue. And then it'll continue from there. I think the challenge that obviously all of our institutions are going to face is the current model that we're in going to be sustainable year after year, especially if that continues to climb. I suppose time will tell.
So, private support's always been important to athletic departments.
For sure.
Do you think it's more important today than ever before because of this increase in their budgets?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that that's accurate. I mean, I think most of the institutions are going to continue to need assistance from their fundraising arms. There's certainly increased revenues coming from TV contracts, and there's increased revenues coming from ticket sales and apparel and corporate partners and that sort of thing. But I do think that the foundations that are supporting the athletics departments are a really important piece of sustainability moving forward.
See, athletic departments that we're familiar with, they're looking for every place they can to try to increase their revenue.
For sure.
And, and I think they should be looking at more private support, doing feasibility studies, doing campaigns that could help them offset that additional cost that they have.
Yeah, I mean, I think that when I was on the Victory and worked together, the campaign that we put together was certainly the reason that we had the success that we had during that time period, and for all the support, all the sports that we supported during that time period. And I think that that continuing to have private support in this space will be really important.
Yeah, I think they need to. I don't know that they understand it completely.
Yeah.
And I think they need to really look at that as an option of where they need to increase their revenue.
Yeah, I mean, I think you and I heard it so many times. I mean, I think the fan base struggles a little bit with this concept.
Right.
Right. There's
Right.
a lot of people who struggle with the concept of student athletes having uncapped earning potential and institutions having uncapped resources that need to be provided to be competitive.
Right.
It's certainly an education process. I think it's apparent that it's not going away anytime soon. The genie's out of the bottle, and this is
Right, yeah.
this is the new normal.
Right. That's right.
And I think
That's right.
those who embrace the new normal and those who
Right.
jump in with 2 feet are certainly going to reap the benefits. We saw it in the college football playoff this year. Certainly some non-traditionals participating, and I think that you can attribute the private support that was able to get them to that point to why they may have had that success.
Where are the collectives now? What's happened to the collectives?
Yeah, so coming out of the settlement, one of the things that's really important for NIL and for this model to be sustainable moving forward is that a student athlete earns from businesses that have a true valid business purpose. It's not just simply donors participating and paying athletes to play, right? That's the pay for play that is prohibited. And so as part of this, the CSC, through a platform called NIL Go, has established parameters for what a company might need to do to meet a valid business purpose. And so if their purpose is to simply pay athlete, it's not valid. And so a student athlete could not receive compensation from a business that is just in the business of paying players. That's what the collectives were. The collective's mission was to
Right.
collect donations, pay players, right?
Right.
And that was what their mission was. Moving forward, that is no longer allowed. Now, collectives are starting to morph into other types of businesses that do have valid business purposes, and that's happening all across the country. But it is going to go through,
Right.
the CSC is going to evaluate each of those businesses.
Right. Brett, who manages the revenue share distribution process, compliance, finance, or a dedicated team?
So it's a little bit of everything at Auburn. So we have checks and balances, and we have various people, separation of duties upon which how we handle things. I can just speak to Auburn. So we have a group of people who are in the process of or responsible for the contracts, right? So we get the contracts completed, we get them signed, we break out the installment schedules of what exactly that's going to look like. Then we have a team who's primarily in our compliance office that's ensuring that we're staying within our cap limitations. There's a software system we have to use for that. We have additional separation of duties within our business office that is handling the payment processing, ensuring that the payments are being directed as they're intended to be. And then we obviously have oversight with our general counsel's office and our compliance office to ensure that we're staying within the rules.
Right. Okay. All right. I think you've already answered this, but how frequently are the payouts? Monthly, quarterly, annually? You said it could be.
Yeah, we typically pay monthly, but it can be done different ways for different reasons. I think most institutions are probably on a pretty consistent monthly schedule. It allows for student athletes to create a budget, to start learning how to handle their finances, on a monthly budget. So it's advantageous from that standpoint.
Do you give them any training or seminars or anything on how to handle this much money at one time?
Yeah, that's a great question. That was really important to our athletic director. I think John Cohen's done a really good job in helping Auburn University in this new world. And the number one thing that I was tasked with when I was hired in June is let's please educate not only our student athletes, but all of the stakeholders involved in this, their parents, their agents, their accountants.
Right.
So in the month of June alone, we conducted education sessions with every single one of our student athletes. Individually. Well, we had group settings.
Right.
But I think we probably did 14 group settings. And then we did 17 individual parent sessions in the evenings after the parents got off work, so that we could go through all of the rule changes, so that they were educated on that. Then it was also very important to John that we provide financial literacy. And so every one of our student athletes have already received financial literacy training, which includes, obviously balancing your finances, paying the taxes, the implications on that, investing the resources that you have. We brought in a company that gives all of our student athletes an app that they can see how they can invest their money, how they can put it in a tax withholding account that's interest bearing, and they understand the process in their second year that they're going to have quarterly estimation. So it's a very important continuing education process.
Has that been well received?
Very well received. Very well received. Our student athletes have appreciated, and especially our transfer student athletes. A lot of them have come in and perhaps they didn't even know that they were going to get a 1099. And here they're on our campus, they get here in January, they get a 1099, and they didn't even know that they should have been saving ahead of time. And so we're happy to help them navigate that process.
Right. Are you seeing athletes make transfer decisions based on revenue share payout differences between institutions?
Yeah, I think if I could just be as candid as this, I think some student athletes make decisions to transfer just like a lot of individuals would make decisions to take other jobs. But I'm not trying to say that our student athletes are employees, but if someone were offered a job that was, more high paying and that was a factor in their decision, then higher revenue sharing payments or more third party NIL opportunities could very well fall into their decision making.
Right.
I'll say this, I think our coaches have done a great job of, number one, ensuring that they're finding student athletes that check all the boxes for what they're looking for on the field and in the classroom, that they're meeting the intangibles that they're looking for, and that's step one. But then we certainly get into a discussion about ensuring that we're compensating our student athletes fairly across what they could receive in the market.
Right. So, Brett, how do you project future revenue share amounts when recruiting prospects?
So if I understand your question correctly, are you asking how do we budget for what we think it's going to look like next year?
Yes.
There's no transparency in the market.
Right.
It's a big guessing game. Certainly hear from other agents or from other colleagues and maybe what they're hearing in the market. But, I think it's about having a plan, sticking to it. Hey, these are resources. At the end of the day, they are finite. Although, coaches and fans would like to think that it's not finite, but it is. You have to stick to a budget. You have to have a plan. And I think all of our coaches have done a great job of building a roster within, what is available. And, our supporters have been fantastic to give us what we think is very competitive. But regardless of your institution and what your resources are, they're going to be finite. And it's very important if your coaches don't have a plan for these specific dollars, and it's not going to matter how many dollars you have. Whatever dollars you have to be great stewards of those dollars, and you have to have a plan for how you're going to allocate that within your sport. And so most are going to do it, allocated by position, and then each player within that position group, so that you can ensure that you're providing resources, in ways that's going to help you be competitive.
So, Brett, to finish up, what overall advice would you give to the people that are watching this video?
Yeah, I think obviously understanding what the J.F. Smith Group does and the resources that y'all were able to provide us. I know when I was at On to Victory, it would have been very difficult to have had the success we had without having a structured campaign in place, without running it as professionally as we did. And so I think, number one, if an institution does not have a plan in place for how they're going to fundraise specific to this project, I think you and I got in a great rhythm of how we were making proposals and how we were, the materials that we put together, the leave behind booklets that we had, the testimonies that we had. When you and I could sit down and talk about the impact it was having on our student athletes, it was just really impactful. And so I think the advice that I would give, if you don't currently have a structure in place where your development officers can sit down and talk about NIL and revenue sharing and new scholarships that have come from this settlement. If you don't have a plan to present these as projects, as opportunities that people can give towards, and you're looking for how to get started in that, I mean, Jerry, you have the blueprint. We did it, and we were really successful in it. And I would just encourage anyone who's looking for those resources to reach
Well,
out.
there's no shortcut here, as we talked before. You know, you got to do this right. You have one chance to make a first impression, and so, you know, I would think that that people would think about that as they're moving forward, if they really want to maximize their efforts and utilize this new revenue sharing process.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Brett, thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Appreciate
Happy to
it.
do it.
Thank you here.
Good to see you.
Great.
Thank you.